right, so are you ready to dive into something big?
Always.
Today, it's the climate crisis.
Oh, sounds heavy.
But don't worry, we're not going all doom and gloom on you. We're going on a journey from crisis to renewal
Okay, I like where this is going.
with Gregory C.R. Williams' Generations Trilogy.
Oh, interesting. I've heard good things about those books.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating series, and it asks a big question. Which generation are you?
Ooh, I like that. Gets you thinking right off the bat.
Exactly. And what I really appreciate about Williams's approach is that he doesn't just present a problem, he offers solutions. And he does it in a way that's like super accessible. We're talking illustrated guides, graphic novels, even audiobooks. There's something for everyone.
That's so important. Making this information accessible to everyone is crucial. It can't just be for the academics and the activists. It needs to reach everyone.
Absolutely. And it's not just about understanding the climate crisis, it's about feeling empowered to do something about it.
Right. Knowledge without action is, well, it's not enough.
Exactly. So let's unpack these three books.
Okay, let's do it.
First, we have Generation Nero, Burning the Future.
Ooh, fiery title.
Then, Generation Equity, addressing the root causes of the climate crisis.
Okay, getting to the core issues there. I like it.
And finally, Generation Phoenix, embracing renewal.
All right, ending on a hopeful note. Sounds good to me.
Yeah, sounds pretty hopeful. But let's start with that fiery first title, Generation Nero. What do you think about when you hear that?
Immediately, I think of the Roman emperor, Nero, fiddling while Rome burned.
Yeah, exactly. That imagery is so powerful.
It is, and Williams uses it brilliantly to talk about inaction in the face of crisis and how that plays out, well, even today.
Okay, so obviously we see it with climate change.
Right, it's like the planet's burning and we're just scrolling through our phones.
Yeah, but the book goes even deeper, right?
Oh, for sure. It talks about all those early warnings we've had about this.
It does. Like, did you know there was a scientist who predicted the impact of coal burning back in 1896?
1896. Wow, we've known about this for a long time.
We have. And it's kind of crazy how long we've known about this and how little we've done.
It really is. And it makes you think, right? Like, how often do we ignore these warnings, even today?
All the time, I'd say.
Yeah, whether it's climate change or any other major issue, there's this pattern of just delaying action.
It's like we're hoping it'll just go away on its own.
Exactly. And Williams really digs into why that is,
Yeah.
He explores those political and economic forces that kind of keep us stuck.
And he doesn't hold back.
Nope. He calls it out.
He dives into those global subsidies for fossil fuels and points out that they still outweigh investments in renewable energy.
By a lot.
Yeah, it's pretty shocking.
It is. It's like we know what the solutions are, but we're not putting our money where our mouth is.
So what does all this mean for someone listening right now?
Well, first I'd say it's about awareness. Like, you got to know where your money is invested right now.
Oh, a good point.
Are you supporting banks and institutions that are still prioritizing those fossil fuels?
Makes you think.
It does. And maybe it's time to switch to those that champion renewables. Another thing you can do is contact your representatives, push for policy changes that'll shift those investments. You actually have more power than you think.
It's about taking action, both on a personal level and pushing for that bigger systemic change.
Yeah, it was both, for sure.
But there's another layer in Generation Nero that I found really relatable.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
It's the whole thing about distractions.
Oh, right.
It talks about our obsession with gadgets, the constant information overload, consumer culture telling us to just buy.
Oh, I know. It's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's like we're being numbed to what actually matters.
Yeah, and that's precisely what Williams is pointing out. It's like, while the planet is literally burning,
we're fiddling with our smartphones.
Exactly. He's calling us to break free from those distractions and focus on what's truly important.
It's a wake-up call we all need.
Okay, so we faced the fire, so to speak, with Generation Nero. And then we explored those solutions rooted in economic democracy with Generation Equity. Now it's time to really dig into Generation Phoenix, embracing renewal and see what we can actually do. What do you think? Where do we even begin?
Well, one of the things that really hit me in Generation Phoenix was how it keeps showing how everything is, like, connected.
Oh, yeah, it's all about that interconnectedness.
It's not just about, like, saving the planet. It's about creating a world that's fair for everyone.
Yeah, it's not just an environmental issue, it's a social justice issue.
Exactly. And the book has so many examples from the real world. Like, remember how it talks about the poorest communities?
Yeah, how they're hit hardest by climate change.
Even though they did the least to cause it.
It's really not fair.
It's a totally unjust situation. And that's where Generation Phoenix goes back to those solutions from Generation Equity, things like economic democracy. It says that's how we can actually start to make things fairer.
It's about giving those communities more power, more resources.
Exactly, to deal with this changing world.
Right, give them a voice, a chance to shape their own future.
Exactly. But the book also goes beyond just the social side of things, you know?
Yeah, it talks about how our whole economic system is hurting the planet.
Oh, absolutely. Like
Right.
how we're so focused on making money that we're like using up all the resources, destroying ecosystems.
It's like we've slapped a price tag on nature.
And it's up for sale to the highest bidder.
It's a scary thought.
It is. Like, what happens when we run out of everything, when there's nothing left?
Yeah, that's the big question.
And Generation Phoenix is pushing us to rethink that whole relationship with the natural world. Like, we're not separate from nature, we're part of it.
And our actions have, like, ripple effects.
Big time. Okay, so how do we start putting this into action?
Right, how do we make this world more sustainable, more just for everyone?
What solutions does Generation Phoenix give us?
What are we supposed to actually do?
Well, it dives into a bunch of different stuff. Like, one big idea is shifting away from what it calls extractive models to regenerative ones.
Okay, now break that down for me.
Basically, stop doing things that just take from the earth.
Right, I get that part.
And start doing things that give back, that help those resources grow back.
Okay, so instead of depleting the soil, replenish it. Got it.
Exactly. Like, instead of cutting down all the trees, plant more.
I can picture that.
Instead of polluting the water, clean it up. You know what I mean?
I do.
It's about working with nature, not against it.
So what are some real-world ways to do that?
Well, think about something called the circular economy.
A circular economy.
Yeah, it's like imagine products designed so you can take them apart when you're done with them.
Okay, so not just tossing them in the trash.
Right. And then those parts are used to make new things. Materials always flowing, being reused.
Like closing the loop, waste becomes a resource.
Yeah, exactly. The book also talks about regenerative agriculture. It's all about building up healthy soil, you know?
Instead of using all those chemicals,
Yeah, get rid of those nasty fertilizers and pesticides.
it's about creating systems that produce food. A&D, keep the land healthy.
What else?
Well, ethical supply chains are a big one.
Right, making sure people are treated fairly.
And that we're taking care of the environment all along the way.
Yeah.
Like how a product is made matters.
It's about making sure everyone benefits, not just a few at the top.
Yeah, it's recognizing that our choices as consumers actually matter.
So worker co-ops, regenerative agriculture, ethical sourcing. It sounds like Generation Phoenix is full of solutions.
It is, but it's not just on individuals to fix this.
Right. It's about pushing for change in the whole system.
Absolutely. And the book offers ways to do that, too. Like it talks a lot about community ownership, giving people more say in how things are run.
Right, like those worker co-ops we talked about. Exactly. And things like community land trusts, where it's the community that's in charge, not some big corporation.
I like that. Putting power back in the hands of the people.
Right. It's about making sure things are done in a way that benefits everyone.
So all these solutions, they're not just ideas.
They're already working in communities around the world.
Right. It's about taking those examples and pushing for change right where we live.
Exactly. Make it local. Now, remember those islands of hope we talked about before?
Yeah, those communities that are already doing things right.
I think those are so important.
They show us what's possible.
Like, there's this story in the book about Sikkim in Egypt. Have you heard of it?
Yeah, turning the desert into a green oasis.
It's amazing. They started by fixing the soil, planting trees, bringing life back to that barren land.
It just shows, even in the toughest places, renewal is possible.
It really does.
And they didn't stop there. They built schools, health facilities, businesses, all run in ethical, sustainable ways.
It's like a model for a whole new way of living.
It's pretty incredible, I'll admit.
And there's another one, Gaviotas, in the Colombian rainforest. They've been experimenting with sustainable living for decades.
Wow, decades.
Yeah, they've come up with all these innovative ways to collect water, use renewable energy, deal with waste. It's a living lab for sustainability.
It's pretty inspiring to see these communities thriving, I'll admit.
It is. It gives you hope.
But how do we take these isolated examples and, make it happen on a larger scale?
Right. How do we scale these things up? That's the challenge.
How do we move beyond these cool little pockets and actually transform the whole system?
Generation Phoenix does have some ideas about that.
Okay, I'm all ears.
It says we need both individual action and systemic change.
Right, so it's both, not one or the other.
Exactly. It's like a two-pronged approach.
So people changing their habits.
And pushing for bigger policy changes.
Exactly.
It all starts with a shift in how we think,
Okay, I'm listening.
Like recognizing we're all connected. Our actions have consequences that reach way beyond ourselves.
We can't just think about ourselves.
Right. We got to get rid of that me-first mindset and think about the bigger picture.
So how do we get people to see that?
Well, education is key. But the book also talks about the power of storytelling.
Yes. Story.
Sharing those inspiring stories of renewal, making people feel something.
Right. It's one thing to read facts and figures, but it's another to hear those stories that really hit home.
Exactly. It's like those islands of hope we talked about. They're not just isolated examples. They're part of a bigger story about change happening all over.
Yeah, it's like building a movement, brick by brick.
And Generation Phoenix encourages everyone to share their own stories of renewal, no matter how small they seem.
Yeah, because every little bit counts.
Exactly. When we share those stories, we inspire others to act.
We create this, ripple effect.
That's it. Spreading out, creating change. So it's individual action, it's changing the system, it's telling the right stories.
It's about believing in a better future and working to make it happen.
And that's what Generation Phoenix is all about.
Okay, so we've talked about individual actions and how to change the whole system. But before we wrap things up, I want to talk about technology.
Oh, yeah, good point. Because, technology is part of how we got into this mess.
Right, but Generation Phoenix doesn't just say technology is bad.
Nope. It says we need to use it the right way.
To create solutions to build a better future.
Exactly. Williams talks about renewable energy, green buildings, even things like AI to help us manage the environment.
It's like using tech as a force for good.
Not just for making money or making things easier for ourselves.
Right. And it has to benefit everyone, not just a few.
Absolutely. And we have to use it ethically,
Make sure it's not making things worse for certain communities.
Right. It's got to be for everyone.
So, using tech wisely, thoughtfully, to create a world where we can all thrive.
And Generation Phoenix really paints a picture of what that could look like.
It does. A world with clean energy, sustainable cities, healthy ecosystems.
Where people are connected to each other and to nature.
It's a future where we have learned from our mistakes and chosen a better path. Okay, we've covered a lot. Solutions, actions, even technology. But there's one last piece Generation Phoenix talks about that I think is the most important.
What's that?
Hope.
It's huge, because without hope, it's easy to just give up.
Yeah, when you look at the scale of this whole climate crisis, it can feel overwhelming.
It can totally paralyze you. But Generation Phoenix is like a reminder that hope isn't just sitting around waiting for good things to happen.
It's about doing something.
Exactly. It's about believing that a better future is possible, and D, than actually doing the work to get there.
So it's a choice, not just a feeling.
It is. And the book is full of stories about people who are choosing hope, People who are putting their time and energy into creating that more sustainable, just world.
People who are out there planting trees, building community gardens, fighting for those who are being hurt the most by climate change.
Yes. People developing those new technologies, inspiring others to get involved. They're the ones showing us that change is possible.
That we don't have to just accept things the way they are. And those stories are so powerful.
They really are.
It's like seeing it in action makes it real.
And that's why Generation Phoenix talks so much about the power of storytelling.
Ah, yes. Stories can touch us in a way that facts and figures just can't.
Right. They inspire us. They motivate us.
They remind us that we're not in this alone.
Exactly. It's like those islands of hope. They're not just random isolated examples. They're all part of this bigger story, this global movement for change.
It's about connecting the dots.
Yes. And when we tell those stories, when we lift up those voices of hope, we create something bigger.
It's contagious, right? Like hope spreads.
It does. It creates momentum, this feeling that we're all working together towards something really important.
And that's what Generation Phoenix is all about, right?
Yeah, it's about embracing that hope, believing in that better future.
And actually getting out there and doing something to make it happen.
That's the key.
So we've talked about the problems, the solutions, the steps we can take, and the power of hope.
Mhm.
If you had to sum it up, what's the main thing you want listeners to take away from the Generations trilogy?
I'd say the biggest takeaway is that we have a choice. Like, we can choose to be part of that Generation Nero, stuck in the past, doing nothing while the world falls apart. Or we can be part of Generation Phoenix.
Embracing renewal, creating that future where both people and the planet can thrive.
Exactly.
It's a big decision, and is one we have to make every day.
And that's both kind of scary, but also really exciting, don't you think?
I do. It's scary because it means we have to step up, challenge ourselves, and, actually do something. But it's exciting because it means we have the power to change things.
It means we're not just bystanders. We can actually shape our future.
It's a pretty powerful realization.
It is. And once you realize that, you start making different choices.
You start living differently.
Yeah, and ultimately you start to build a better world.
That's a message we all need to hear.
It really is. And it's what's at the heart of the whole Generations trilogy.
Well, I gotta say, after diving into these books with you, I'm feeling pretty inspired. Hopeful, even.
Me too.
And I'm definitely feeling ready to take action.
That's awesome. And don't forget, there are tons of people out there feeling the same way. You're not alone in this.
Right, there's a whole movement out there.
And you can be part of it.
So if you're feeling inspired by what you've heard today, I encourage you to check out Gregory C.R. Williams' Generations Trilogy. These books are seriously a must-read for anyone who cares about the planet.
They're powerful, and they remind us that we all have a part to play in making things better.
Well said. Thanks for exploring these books with us today. We'll see you next time when we dive into another fascinating topic. Until then, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep choosing hope.